Well, a campaigner of the Occupy LEKKI Toll Gate planned protest says the demonstration set for Saturday is legitimate. Wale Olubanji says a demonstration will take place against the official reopening of the site. Campaigners said the toll gate is a symbol of death, but it must be turned into a symbol of victory and justice. There are reports of counter-protests being organized, and Olubanji says the organizers only want to defend personal interest and the interest of the owners of the LEKKI Toll Gate. And joining us for more on this story is lawyer Dele Farotimi. Glad to have you join us.
The pleasure to be here.
Good, fantastic. The question is, what really is your motivation for this protest? Do you think you're being sensitive and wise to engage in this at this particular point in time and considering what has transpired in the past?
I believe there is little facts. I became aware of the planned protest day before yesterday. Found it online just like any other Nigerian. But in the immediate aftermath of the NSAS protest, after the brutal murders that took place on the 20th, some of us became inadvertently involved because care had to be taken of the injured. We had to provide assistance to most of the victims. So I have a channel of communication and I speak with the young people, especially the ones from the LEKKI Toll Gate. So when it was brought to my attention day before yesterday, that in reaction to the news of the reopening of the toll gate, there was a planned protest for Saturday. My original reaction was, why now? And I was having these discussions with the organizers, and then I saw the different reactions online. They no bond them, Papa well, defend Lagos. So again, when you weigh these two, the first thing I asked myself was, however much I might disagree with the exercise of a right, it is incumbent on me, once I recognize that it is the person's right, to defend their right to exercise that right. It is a democratic right. In a democracy, even though we are not one, we pretend to be one, that people should be able to express their disagreement as long as it is done peacefully. But to now have reactions where people are being threatened for daring to express a desire to protest, it is repugnant in the extreme and it is fascist. This is still a democracy. The only thing anyone might want to speak about is, please let the government ensure that it does not degenerate into violence, because it is always the government that introduces the violence. But as a right, let's think about that as a principle first. Does the citizen have a right to protest peacefully? Nobody can dispute that.
Okay,
yes,
Dele, I want to ask at this point, because the premise of the law is that one right ends where another right begins.
Yeah.
You may not have time to answer this in full, but I'll just throw down the question to get us going. And I just want to maybe just qualify. The government, it's not proven that the government always introduces the violence. But moving on, some people may have rightly been concerned that protests at the toll gates may impinge on free movement, especially if we're looking at the visuals. They stand and block the passage of cars going through that place, which is a valid concern. Would you not agree to that?
Oh, yes, it is. I agree completely. Those are valid concerns. And my own take on it really is that if citizens have expressed the desire to protest, and the government and other citizens have these concerns about the free movement of vehicle and people through that same place, I would imagine that the proper thing to do at that point might be engage with the protesters, perhaps ask them to confine themselves to a part. As at today, it is not the entirety of the toll gate that have been reopened. Up till today, is only a section of it. If they've said they want to come and protest on Saturday, surely, in a democracy there should be sufficient room for the accommodation of legitimate grievances, you need not agree with the exercise of that right.
All right, we'll get back to you in a bit. Just keeping you on pause. We'll be back. All right, we still have Farotimi,
yes,
if I'm correct. Yes, yeah, Dele, I got it. Dele Farotimi is still here with us. Yes, we're just discussing behind the scene, and beautiful, well and good. I was just wondering, it's a pity we don't have the other side. I read an article where they were saying these hoodlums, and I felt, why should you call somebody who is protesting a hoodlum? But then again, Dele, have you considered, or the people doing this, have they considered the fallout? I mean, these two protests are going to happen on the same day. Isn't that a recipe for anarchy and mayhem at the same place, the same event, two opposing sides?
Look, at the end of the day, we either have a government or we don't have one. We either have a democracy or we don't have one. If a people have come out and said, look, we are aggrieved, there are clear indications that the Nigerian army, which is meant to be a principal party at the tribunal, has decided that it has no respect for the tribunal. And then the LCC considered a principal accused, a principal participant in what has been variously described as a massacre, and has not finished giving account of his part, has now been rewarded with an order asking it to go back to its operations. It is conceivable that people will be aggrieved. Now, they are aggrieved and they've said, we're going to protest. And the history of that protest has always been peaceful. And then, as with every fascist regime, you immediately have a voice speaking up against the exercise of a right and speaking the language of the government. Let me give you an analogy. I went to a particular European embassy at Lekki, Water Carrington, and there is a particular gentleman, a Nigerian. He's the security personnel manning their processes there. He is one of the rudest human beings you're ever going to come across. He will speak to you the way the Europeans will not speak to you. The same words that the economic and political interests would want to speak but could not speak because of political correctness and decorum are the words that these counter-protesters are speaking. Nobody has said no. They have every right to protest, but must it be violent? Nobody who has protested under the umbrella of the NSAS movement, I've never seen any one of them holding any weapon. The people who do the counter-protest, we've seen them before the Lekki shooting. In this same Lagos, we saw state bosses ferrying the likes of Adagun, the one who was chasing people around in Alausa.
Now, Dele, are you being fair? No, hold on. Yeah. Dele, are you being fair because you do not know the people who are going to protest now? So if you're tagging them already, there seems to be a problem.
We've heard their language.
Their language is bad enough.
No, please. Let's be fair to ourselves. We've heard the language. The language is exceedingly violent. They no born them papa. Let's be clear. When somebody comes and says that because I have elected to exercise a constitutional right, as useless and imperfect as our constitution is, it still allows me the right to protest. At least it says so. I have said so in relation to this NSAS thing. Nigeria would have to decide whether it is a democracy or a fascist state.